So you're about to fly your DJI Mini 4 or Mini 5 Pro over water, so you need to watch this video first because it could ultimately save your drone. So today I'm going to be breaking down exactly how to fly your DJI Mini 4 or Mini 5 safely over rivers, lakes, oceans and waterfalls. And that's going to include the best settings you've got, the biggest mistakes that can cause your drone to crash, and sensor issues that hit the drones hardest, especially when you're flying over water. So by the end of the video, you'll know how to get dramatic, cinematic overwater shots while reducing the risk, improving stability and avoiding the number one reasons that the drones end up at the bottom of the sea. So I am going to do a couple of test flights. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight down the beach, just over where the water's breaking, and there's going to be a lot of reflection, and see what effect that has on the drone. The second one I'm going to do is I'm just going to fly it several hundred meters out over the sea and see exactly what happens with the drone when I do that. Now, overwater footage is some of the best content you can get with your Mini 4 or Mini 5 Pro. But water is also where most pilots lose their drones. So in the video, I'm going to cover the real risks of flying the DJI Mini 4 and Mini 5 Pro over water, what the sensors can and can't do, the best DJI settings for safe overwater flight, wind, battery and signal planning, the shots to avoid and safer alternatives, and a final pre-flight checklist for getting safe flights every time. So first of all, is the DJI Mini 5 Pro safe to fly over water? Well, the short answer to that is yes, but you do need to take a lot of things into consideration. And if you fly by water, then you need to remember that it is only an emergency zone. Over land, you can land the drone wherever you want, but over water, if anything goes wrong, you're going to lose the drone. And this is because the water increases the risk. Because first of all, it's reflective, especially at sunrise and sunset. It's also got a low texture, especially with things like glassy lakes when there's not much wind. It's constantly moving, so you've got the ocean waves like I've got here, and that means it can confuse the vision positioning and the obstacle sensing. And the wind is often stronger and less predictable when you are actually out over a body of water, especially if you are out over the sea. So the goal isn't to be fearless, it's to reduce the chances of a problem and make sure you have a plan if the worst does happen. So when you are flying over water, the Mini 5 Pro and the Mini 4 Pro both use various systems to make sure that the drone flies stable, including GPS, the IMU, the barometer and vision sensors. And when you are flying over water, there are two issues which matter the most. The first one is going to be the downward vision and optical flow problems. Now, the downward vision sensors try to read the surface or the texture of whatever is below it to keep the drone in position. And of course, water can cause drifting while hovering, the altitude wobble, as well as sudden drops when the surface looks black or reflective. Now, I did have an issue back a couple of months ago when I was flying the DJI Mini 5. And I was filming a person paddleboarding, and as the drone was revolving around them, the drone became quite erratic and it was moving up and down and left to right, drifting all over the place and not keeping the subject in focus. And this was due to the fact that the sensors were getting confused by the reflection of the water. So the best practice in situations like this is to avoid hovering low over water and stay a lot higher than you think you're actually going to need for filming your particular subject. The second thing is that the obstacle sensing can be less reliable. Water reflection and sun glare can reduce the confidence in what the sensors can see. So again, the best practice this is don't rely solely on the sensors to save you. You need to fly with a lot of clearance around the drone and at a safe altitude. Now, before any flight, there are a number of things which you should take into consideration and try to avoid if possible. The first one is don't launch from any unstable surfaces, and this is going to include things like boats, floating docks, moving platforms, anything that's moving about, because that's just going to increase the risk of losing the drone. So the best thing is always take off from solid ground. So the next thing you want to do is don't try and skim too low to get the perfect shot, because low altitude and water means that the sensor could be confused very, very easily, and that's going to increase the margin of error, and again you run the risk of losing the drone. If you do need to go low, then I would suggest using the 2x zoom you got on the drone to make it appear that you're flying lower and closer than you actually are. So this means always keep a best minimum height buffer for the drone. Now the next one is a lot of mistake that new pilots make, and that's don't fly out with the wind. It's a classic everyday mistake that new pilots make. So you always want to remember that the flight out can be easy, but bringing it back could be impossible. So if you can, always fly out against the wind. So where I am today, we've got an easterly wind, so the wind is travelling from that direction, going over towards Swansea. So it's better that I fly into the wind, because that's going to mean that they're going to have the maximum wind resistance going out, and the wind's going to bring the drone back a lot easier with less power needed on the return, because obviously it's got a tailwind. And then also don't push the battery down to critical. The autoload batteries can force a descent, and the last thing you want to do is have the drone descend onto the water. So in view of this, always make sure that you've got your return to home set, so the drone is going to come back and land safely on land if you can. If you are flying out from a boat, then use the dynamic home point. And if you need to know more about the dynamic home point, there's a link here which I've done on a separate video showing how to use that when you are out and about. Okay, so this is the point where I stop for 2 minutes and say, if you are finding it useful, if you could do the like and subscribe thing, that would be greatly appreciated. There's also an option there for buy me a coffee, and this means that I'll be able to keep my 40-year-old granddaughter happy, who's currently behind the camera and is really fed up of being dragged on the beach with me on a Sunday morning when she could be fast asleep. And it also means that she's not on my back nagging because she's got something useful. So some of the best settings you need to bear in mind when you are flying the drone, first of all, is going to be the return to home, or the RTH altitude. So always make sure that you do have plenty of clearance. Now, if you're down a beach, it doesn't really make much of a difference. You do want to make sure that the drone is set to return high. You don't want it coming around and crashing into any obstacles you may have on the beach, somewhere like trees. Then you need to set up the home point correctly. So wait for a strong GPS lock before takeoff. Confirm that the home point has been updated before you launch, and then always make sure, if you can, that the drone is going to come back to land. And if you are taking off on maybe a paddleboard, you can always set the home point in the controller so it does come back to land. Or if you are flying from a boat, then you can use the dynamic home point, so the drone is going to follow you. Now, if you want to know more about the dynamic home point, there's a video up here which you can watch, and that explains everything about that in depth. And then, of course, you've got the battery. So you want to use the 50% rule, which means that you never use more than 50% of the battery. You always want to try and get the drone returning after you've used 35 to 40%, just to make sure you do have a margin of error for the drone to come back. And then when you are flying over water, to get some of the best shots, you want to use ND filters, especially one which has got a polarization facility, or a CPL, because this means it's going to reduce the amount of glare you're going to get coming off the water, and that's going to give you a lot nicer footage as well. And again, if you want to know more about ND filters, there is a link up here that you can watch a video I done solely on that. Now, as I said a little bit earlier, the wind can make a massive difference when you are flying the drone. So you need to bear in mind the wind and weather conditions a lot more when you are flying over water. And this is because the wind over the sea can be a lot stronger than it is over land, because obviously there's nothing slowing it down as it comes in. So just remember, if it feels windy on land, it's going to be a hell of a lot more windy when the drone is flying out over the water. So the safety checks you've got for that, if possible, always check the wind at a height altitude if you can. Watch the ground speed on the way out versus the way back, because that could be a massive difference again. And if the return speed drops suddenly, then turn back immediately. Another thing you want to bear in mind is, if it doesn't seem like you've got enough power to get back, go into sport mode if you can and drop the height of the drone. Because what happens is, if you are doing a return to home and the drone's gone up to maybe 30 meters, the wind speed at 30 meters is going to be a lot higher than it would be at 10 meters. So try and bring it down and then bring it back safely. But again, bear in mind the distance you've got between the water and the drone itself. So going back to the battery and safety range, as I mentioned earlier, you've got the 50% rule. So use no more than 50% battery going out. If it takes 25% of the battery to reach your drone, don't assume it's going to take 25% for the drone to return. The wind, the voltage drop means that the drone is going to lose power a lot quicker, especially, as I said, if you are hitting a headwind on the return. Another thing you need to do is keep your signal strong. Now, flying over water, the signal can become weird due to deflections and line of sight changes. So to ensure that you do have a strong signal, make sure that the antennae are orientated correctly, that you're going to stay within a comfortable range of the drone and avoid flying behind cliffs or boats or anything else which could result in the signal being lost or weakened. Now, when it comes to the actual best practices of flying over water, there are again a number of things you need to bear in mind. So the first one is going to be the safe minimal altitude. So if you're on calm water, you need at least 5 to 8 meters between the surface of the water and the drone. If you go in over ocean or waves, it's going to be double that, so you're going to need at least 8 to 15 meters minimum to keep the drone safe. Also, keep the drone moving. If the drone's going to be hovering over water, there's more chances of the sensors being confused, and that's going to result in the drifting left to right and the GPS positioning being off. So always keep a forward motion, because if the drone's moving forward, it means the sensors are going to keep on detecting changes to the surface, and that's going to give you a safer flight as well. And as I said earlier, if you are looking for low look shots, instead of skimming the surface of the water, fly higher. Keep the gimbal pointed down to create the illusion of closeness, and also use the zoom feature or cropping, and that's going to result in good footage but safe footage. So basically, when you are flying over the water, you want to make sure that you've got your GPS locked and you've got strong satellite signals, that your home point is being confirmed, as I said, preferably over land, and that your return to home altitude is set to an acceptable height. Also, make sure that you've got at least 90% battery before you take off, that you've checked the wind direction and the strength, that you launch from solid ground if you can. You don't want to hover over water, because again, as I said, that's going to confuse the sensors, so always keep the drone moving. And finally, plan to return when you've got at least 50% battery power left, because you don't know what the wind conditions are going to be like as the drone comes back to shore. Now, flying the DJI Mini 4 Pro and the Mini 5 Pro can look fantastic, but you need to respect the risks that this involves. And most crashes happen because either you're flying too low, you misjudge the wind, you trust in the sensors too much instead of looking what the drone's actually doing, or you're staying out too long, and this results in low battery power and not enough juice for the drone to return safely to land. So the answer is to try and fly smoother, fly higher than you need, plan your return early, and keep an eye on exactly what the drone is doing. And if you follow these rules, then you shouldn't have any issues actually flying the drone over water. Okay, so I've come down to the beach now. The wind is blowing from the east, so the plan is I'm going to take it out over the breakers, and then I'm going to fly it down the coast into the wind. So if I run into any difficulties, it's just a matter of me bringing it across back onto the promenade. So once the drone starts going, I'm just going to engage cruise control and then keep it in visual line of sight until I lose it, and then bring it back. Move it forward, initiate cruise control, and see how it goes. So the height is staying at 5.3 meters. And for some reason the drone has gone up and is starting to rise. So you can see from that the drone did start to fluctuate a little bit. It went from the 5 meters up to 7 meters, so it does go to show there was a variant of 2 meters as the drone was flying. So I'm going to bring the drone back now and do exactly the same, put it in cruise control and see how it goes. And on this one, you can see that the drone is staying at that 7.1 meters. So you can see on that flight it went from 7.1 meters, cruise control was initiated, but it actually went up to 18 meters. So there's a massive difference flying over the water of 11 meters. So this time now I'm going to do a flight, but I'm going to do it straight out over the sea for around about 200 meters and see how we get on with that. But I'm actually going to have it in cine mode, so it's a bit more control and it's a lot slower. So it's set now to 5.1 meters. I'm just going to move it out, engage cruise control. Staying at 5 meters, and it's gone out to coming up on 200 meters. Still in line of sight. And it's gone out to 300 meters now, and it's going out of line of sight. So I'm going to stop the drone there, and now I'm going to bring it back and again engage cruise control. So you can see now as it's coming back, it is still staying round about the 5 meter mark. So again, it's coming back, no issues at all, staying at the 5 meters. Okay, so as you can see from that, on the first one where I went straight along the beach, there was a lot of glare and reflection coming off both the sand and the sea, and I'm guessing that's why the drone did fluctuate in height quite a bit, going from between 6 and 18 meters. Whereas when I flew it straight out to sea for 300 meters where the glare was a lot less, the drone did stay at that 5 meters mark. So it does go to show that the reflection you get from the surface, whether or not it's the water or the sand, can make a big difference to actually flying the drone and the safety of it. So just to see if this is the case, I'm just going to go down to the shoreline. I'm going to fly the drone just over the water and then see what happens with it there. Okay, so this time I'm going to do the same test, but I've got the drone more on a reflective part of the beach, as you can see. It's set to 3.1 meters, and I'm just going to fly it down and then see if the height stays at that. So on this test now, it does seem to be staying at the 3.1 meters, which is what I set it to when the drone took off. And still, it's staying at the 3.1 meters. So I've taken it out to the 300 meters. I'm going to bring it back again on cruise control and see if it stays at that 3.1 meters. So again, it is coming back now, staying at that 3.1. Okay, so as you can see from that, there was 3 tests and there was a massive variation. On the first one, the drone did actually raise up quite a bit. It went up by over 10 meters, even though I was in cruise control and there wasn't any input on the sticks. The second one, I took it straight out to the sea, and it did fluctuate a little, but not really much. But if you are flying at a good height, you're not really going to notice a meter of difference in the height. And on the last one, I went back along the beach, and this time I stayed at 3.1 meters and went out for 300 meters, and it stayed at that distance perfectly. So it does seem to be some sort of issues where it may rise up It may say where it is. You just need to bear that in mind when you are flying, because obviously if it does drop and you're not paying attention, you run the risk of losing the drone. Okay, that's the end of the video. If you did find it useful, if you could do the like and subscribe thing, that would be greatly appreciated. There's also an option there for buy me a coffee, and any funds I get from that are going to go towards new equipment for the channel as well. If there's anything you want to see in relation to the Mini 4 Pro, the Mini 5 Pro, the DJI Neo 1, Neo 2, the Hover X1 Pro or Pro Max, also let me know in the comments below, or any questions in relation to any action cams. And now I'm going to go home with a miserable 14-year-old who's complaining that she's cold and embarrassed that I mentioned her in the video. So again, I'll catch you in a few days' time, and thanks for watching. Bye.